Hello, this is Ev from Vincent Music, and today we're going to be having a look at the piece Romance by Merkus. So, when we look at a piece for the very first time, a really useful place to look before you start to play anything is at the very beginning of the first line. That tells you lots of useful information, such as you'll see it has adagio with a crotchet equals 80. So that tells you how fast the piece should go. If you would like to put on your metronome just to have a see, okay, roughly how fast is this piece? Because if there's no tempo marking, you could pick any tempo. You could take it much too fast, much too slow, so you want to get a good idea of roughly how fast that is. Then, if you look on the actual stave, you'll see that there's a key signature and a time signature. So have a look at the key signature. What does it say? Yes, that is 1 flat, which is B flat. Do you know which major scale goes with a B flat? I hope you said F major, because an F major scale has a B flat in it and no other accidentals or no other modified notes. The other thing to look at is the time signature. So have a look at that. Have you seen that particular symbol before? If you don't know, the C stands for common time, and that just means 4/4. Exactly the same thing. Do you know, can you list what 4/4 means? It means there are 4 crotchet beats in a bar. So, let's come back to the key signature, where we're in F major. So, let's start by playing an F major scale, and let's play it really slowly and thinking about having a beautiful sound, because this piece it's a romance. You want to have a beautiful sound in it. It's not about showing off how fast you can play, it's about sounding lovely. So let's start getting into thinking like that by playing an F major scale, but don't think about playing it really fast. Play it slow enough that you don't have to think about your fingers too much. Just take a breath and play a really slow F major scale, like this. And really focus on having a clear, beautiful sound and not cracking any of the notes. Have a pause and do that. Make sure you do it until you're happy with it. Okay, I hope you sounded lovely. So now we're going to have a look at the actual piece. So we'll look at the first bar. What do you see? What are the rhythms? What are the notes? Take a moment to have a look and notice if there's anything weird, and make sure to really count out that rhythm and just sort of have a finger through of the notes. Have a pause and get your head around that. Okay, so you may have noticed that tie of a minim to a quaver. So that might be a little bit tricky to count. So remember, in your head, always have your 1, 2, 3, 4. Try and have that going in your head this whole piece, because there's quite a few ties in it. So yeah, it's really good to just keep that going in your head. But remember, when you have that going in your head, try not to bounce every note. So what I do not want to hear is Did you hear how that was very bouncy on every beat? It's good to do that in your head, but you don't want that to come out in your flute playing. So just think about having the beat go in your head, and make sure it's definitely accurate. You can put your metronome on to help with getting off that tie quickly enough. And you also would want to aim to do the first bar and the second bar in one breath. So it doesn't have to be very loud, and you can take it a little bit faster than 80 if you need to, in order to keep all of that in one breath. So I will play, and then I would like you to play, making sure that you have the correct rhythm, not bouncing on all of the long notes, and try and, if you can, keep thinking of a nice sound. I'm sure that sounded lovely. Now, let's have a look at the next bar. What do you notice about the rhythm? The rhythm in that third bar is the same as the rhythm in the first bar. Different notes, but the rhythm is exactly the same. So you already know that rhythm. You've practiced working on that tie, making sure it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. I'm sure you've definitely worked on that. And so you've already learned that rhythm. Now you just have to learn how to do those new notes. So just remember what those notes are. It starts on a G, and have a play of that and go on to the next bar, because that next bar has a very similar rhythm to the second bar. It's just the very end that's different. So I will play, and then I would like you to have a play. Yeah, when you think about that last bar, with that with that quaver rest, take a really big breath in there, because the next bar is going to require quite a lot of air. So take a really good breath, and also think in your head. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Remember to keep that rhythm going as you play. Now, before we move on to the next bar, I'd like you to go back to those first 2 bars and have a play through that whole thing. Remember, what are you going to think about while you play? Have a pause, think of the things that we've just talked about, and then I will come back and remind you what they are. So, I would like you to think about the ties. Make sure that the ties are all correct, so it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Remember, and on the ties, don't bounce the note every time, but keep it going in your head, just not in your flute playing. Take a breath after the second bar, so after that A, and how do we make sure that we keep in time while taking a nice good breath? Do you remember? We do it by cutting off that note, so only hold it for a crotchet and use a whole crotchet rest to take in lots of air to keep going through to the next bar. That's a tricky one we haven't spoken about today, but it's good to remember that in order to stay in time when you play those 4 bars all together. And remember, sound beautiful, have fun, play the correct notes, all the fun things like that. So have a pause and play through that first line, thinking of all of those things. Pause now. Great. If it's not working this first time, feel free to just practice that on its own, for a day or so. You could even pause this video and come back to it tomorrow. Just really make sure that you start to understand that rhythm, and don't feel too uncomfortable with it before moving on. We've only spent 9 minutes on it. So, if we come to this next bar in the second line, you may see some notes that you don't recognize. So, let's figure out what note we start on. So, pick a note that you definitely know, such as the F, which is the top line of the stave, and then above the F, on the space above, is a G, and then you go up a line, and then on that line is an A. So that's the first note of this bar. The rhythm is the same as the first bar, it's the same as the third bar. We don't need to worry about it too much right now, because you've already done it. You're already perfect at it, I'm assuming. So, but we do have, after that A, that's a new note that you might not know. So, you have the A on that line. Above the A, on the space above the A, is 1 note higher, which is a B, or in this case a B flat. Then, so you have that line, then you have one more line above that, so here is our stave with the F, then we have G, A, then we have B, and we have another line, which is a C. Remember that the fingering for a C is the same as a lower C, you just have to blow a little bit differently in order to get that higher C to sound. So that's on this line here. and then above this line, on the space, is a D. Now, the fingering for a D is a little bit different to that of the lower D. So, we're going to have a look at that now. So, for that high D, which remember is line, line, it's on the space above that line, it is like a regular D. So your thumb key's on, or, wherever, and your pinky's off. Then, for a high D, you take off this whole hand and you put down this pinky. The other way that you could think about it is that it's like a G, but you take off this finger. And it sounds like this. It's a little bit tricky to reach up that high, so it's okay if you don't do it straight away. Just make sure you have the fingering correct. So it's your thumb, either one, doesn't matter. This first finger is off, this finger is down, this finger is down, these fingers are off, and this pinky is down. Now, in order to work up to getting to that note, we'll start on a note we know, and we're going to practice slurring up to it, because if it's just the next note, it should be easy, you can play an F, you can play a G, if you can play a G, you can play an A, etc, etc. So, we'll start with an F. Let's play a nice F, and at the top of the stave, and make sure that you don't crack it. Give it a couple of goes to play it, to make sure it's nice and smooth, and always hitting that one, and not the lower one. Great, so now we're going to start with that F, and we're going to slur to the G. So take a good breath. Now we're going to hit the G on its own. Make sure that it doesn't drop to the lower one, that it doesn't start on that lower one. Make sure that it's only ever that higher G. Now that you can do the F, you can slur to the G, and you can hit the G on its own as well. So, which you already know how to do. But we're now going to start the G and slur up to the A. Give that a couple of goes. Make sure that it's never coming down to that lower one. Make sure it's always at that higher octave above the stave. Okay, so you can slur from F to G. You can hit the G. You can slur from G to A. Now you have to hit the A on its own. Make sure that the A stays right at that A. It doesn't drop down, it stays at that A the whole time. Give that a few goes. So, now you can hit the A. We now have to work on starting on the A and then slur to the B flat. So we'll start on the A. Give that a couple of goes. Make sure that when you start the A, it always starts at the correct pitch. It's always that higher one before you slur up. And if it drops in the middle or it starts low, start again. And do it, if you can do that 3 times in a row without dropping down to the lower one, that's fantastic, and I will cheer you forever. So have a pause and try working on that. Great, fantastic. You did it 3 times in a row. Woohoo! Love you, you did such a good job. Fantastic. Now, we've got to keep going even higher. So, we're going to hit the B flat on its own. Make sure that you hit it. It doesn't go down to the lower octave, it doesn't start at the lower octave, it's always that higher octave. Give that a go. Okay, now we're going to go from the B flat to the C. So we start on the B flat, which you can do definitely perfectly, and you can do 3 times in a row, 100% correct. Now slur from the B flat to the C. This is quite high, so you're definitely going to want to take a good breath and make sure that you're not locking your knees or doing anything weird up here. You just want to have slightly bent knees in order to help the air flow through really well. So start in the B flat again and go up to the C. Take a good breath. Now, give that a go of doing that 3 times in a row correctly. I think you can do it. Okay, fantastic. I hope you've done it 3 times in a row, absolutely correctly. Now, this is the last set. You have to hit the C exactly correctly, so not dropping down to the lower octave. If you find it tricky to immediately hit that C, practice going up, so from the F slur to G, you can slur to A, and then practice getting up there and hitting it again. Something like this. Oh no, I can't do it. Okay, we're going to work going down the bottom. Some exercise like that. So practice going from the F in order to get up to the C if you're finding it tricky to hit that C straight away. Fantastic. Now, one more time, just hit that C, absolutely 100% correct, and then we get up to the last thing. Okay, so now we're going to go from the C up to the D. Now remember the fingering for a D. It's your thumb, your first finger off, and then these 2 down, these ones off, and your pinky down. So it's like a G, but with this finger off. So we're going to start, just practice going with your fingers from the C to the D. From the C to the D. C, D. Okay, now you can do it with your fingers. We now have to do it with all that air and the sound that we've been working on. So, start from the C and slow up to the D. Remember, have good posture, so bend your legs slightly, have everything nice and upright, not leaning really far forward, not leaning really far back, nice and upright, and take a really good breath from down here. Great, give it a few goes. Again, if you're struggling to hit that C, even work up from that F and slow going up, and then work on getting that C up to the D. It's okay if it doesn't work today. You just get really sick and tired of it. It's okay. You can stop and come back to this tomorrow. Fantastic. So now let's just hit the D on its own. Okay, great. Now we can put it into context with this piece. So if we come back to the Romance, come back to bar 5, so we have our A, and it's a tie, so it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that D is on the and. So let's just practice hitting the D and doing the end of that bar. So D, C, B flat. Okay, now let's practice slowly, just going from an A to a D to a C to a B flat. Okay, so now let's try in rhythm. Remember, let's take a really good breath beforehand, and remember count 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Alright, it will sound like this. Okay, great. Now, if we go on to the next bar, it looks like it's got another tie, but it's that B flat and it's down to an A. And so you may think, oh no, how am I going to breathe? I'm running out of air. Well, you slow from the B flat to the A, and then take a good but quick breath, because we don't want to get out of time, in order to not run out of air before we get to the end of the bar. So, do you want to practice doing that on its own first? Okay, great. Now let's put bar 5 and bar 6 together. So remember the tie, remember getting up to a D and the fingering, and then take the breath after the A in bar 6. And it will sound like this. Okay, so the next 2 bars are very simple rhythm. It's just lots of quavers in the first bar, sorry, in bar 7, and then bar 8 is 2 minims. So let's, can you say that rhythm and finger the notes? I'll let you pause to do that. The notes might be in a slightly unfamiliar pattern, sort of going up and then coming down and then skipping a note. So have a practice just working through those fingers, and then as you get to the end of that line, you can cut that A short to take a nice good breath. If you can get all the way from there to the end of that line, so from after that A to the end of the line in one breath, that would be fantastic, because it is only marked mezzo piano, so you shouldn't be playing too loudly. I understand that you might be using a lot of air to try and get out those higher notes, and it's okay if you don't quite get to doing all of it in one breath at the moment. You have a lot of things to think about. So let's recap for this, the first 2 lines of Romance. What are the things that you want to think about? Have a pause, list out all of the things that we talked about today, and then I will go through them. Okay, so we spoke about looking at the beginning of the piece to figure out what we need to know. So how fast is it? What's the key signature? What's the time signature? And the C means 4/4. Then we spoke about the ties, both making sure that they're very much in time and making sure that we don't beat on don't huff on everyone as we think it in our head, because we really want to think it in our head to make sure we get that correct rhythm, but you also really want to make sure that it's not interrupting the flow of the music. Then speak about taking a good breath by cutting off the last note, and then you go on. The rhythms are the same in bars 1, 3 and 5, which is always good to note. Then we worked a lot on getting up to the high D. So can you show me the fingering for high D? It is your thumb, and this finger up, these 2 fingers down, these fingers up, and your pinky down. So, and then we worked on getting up there by starting at the F, and if you can get an F, you can get a G. If you can get a G, you can get an A. If you get an A, you can get a B flat. If you can get a B flat, you can get a C. If you can get a C, you can get a D. Congratulations, you can hit a D. And then we spoke about you take a breath after that A in bar 6, and then work on those fingers in bar 7 and try to get through all that in one breath, but if you can't, that's okay. So work on getting that high D. I know it's a little bit tricky, but it's just got to use that air and practice working up to it. So that is all for today, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.